Well, firstly, good morning, everybody, and can I say thank you for coming out here to Waikato University. It's been a great day in the Waikato. This morning I went to LIC, which is just a fabulous business, working very hard to improve productivity of the dairy industry, and just sort of the Google of ag research. It was a really fantastic place to go visit this morning. And then I've also given a lecture to some of the business students here around business strategy, which has been really fun to sort of touch base with some of my old themes as well. And then this afternoon we spent time with the Waikato Housing Initiative to understand the work that they're doing here in the region, and I'm really excited to hear about what's happening with particularly community housing providers and social housing. And then on to the base shopping mall, where we'll spend some time with the security team and obviously some of the impacted retail workers there at Michael Hill as well. So with that, happy to take your questions.
The International Monetary Fund has openly criticised the UK government over its plan for tax cuts, warning that the measures are likely to fuel the cost of living crisis. Will this make you rethink promised tax cuts here?
Oh, look, I think we've got to be really clear. What you're seeing in the UK is completely different from what we've been talking about and proposing. First and foremost, you've got a massive amount of wholesale change to the tax system there, on top of and coupled with a massive amount of stimulus spending as well. What we're talking about is modest and sensible tax changes around making sure we can inflation adjust tax thresholds and unwinding the government's stealth taxes that it's put in since this government. So, and of course, when we get there, we'll be weighing up the conditions and the fiscal conditions that we have, and making sure that we do that sensibly and appropriately. What I'd just say to you is what that also shows very clearly is financial discipline really matters, and what you're seeing here in New Zealand is we are feeling those impacts because we have a government that has got spending out of control with Grant Robertson, and at the same time we've got a Reserve Bank now that's having to raise interest rates in order to deal with that really wasteful and inefficient government spending. So it underscores again why this country needs a good economic management so we can better deliver public services and help people get ahead.
So given the key line is tax cuts are likely to fuel the cost of living and be inflationary, why not step back and just rethink this?
I can tell you what we're proposing is the best way by which we can get money to people so they can navigate the cost of living crisis. What you're seeing in New Zealand right now is that people are doing it incredibly tough. Interest rates are about to rise in the UK. They've already risen here in New Zealand, and that is because the government has had its foot on the accelerator, being addicted to spending. This is a government led by a finance minister that has no idea. For the last 5 budgets, he's not been able to deliver what he said he would do. And there is no chance he'll do that going forward. He's spending $51 billion more, and at the same time he's raised $41 billion more in tax. And because of that, the Reserve Bank is now having to raise interest rates. And what you see is New Zealand is dealing with a massive increase in the cost of living over the last 32 years. You see declining real wages, where their wages are not keeping up with prices, down almost 4%, and you're also seeing rapidly rising interest rates. What this is saying is very clearly, when you have an undisciplined government not managing the economy well and not with a proper economic plan to navigate inflation, this is the experience that we're having here in New Zealand too.
And the falling New Zealand dollar is likely to see import prices here rise and could add to inflation here. What solutions are there here in New Zealand to combat inflation driven by it?
Well, it makes it even more important for the bits that we can control around domestic inflation. The reason for why we have fruit and vegetables going through the roof, the reason why construction costs are going through the roof, is all because of this government's failure to have a proper economic plan. As we've said, you stop passing costs on to businesses that ends up raising prices. You deal with the bottlenecks in the economy, which is largely around immigration settings, where every sector, every region is short. You control government spending and are disciplined around that and treat every dollar as if it was your own. You make sure that you actually give tax relief to people so they have money in their pocket, because I trust them to spend it much better than Grant Robertson ever will. And you make sure the Reserve Bank of New Zealand is 100% focused on fighting inflation. That's the 5-point plan you need.
And a bit of a change of tune, but what are your thoughts on the changes to legislation to offer greater protections to migrants?
Well, look, I think the reality is, with respect to RSE workers, is that where your question's coming from? Yes, well, what I'd say to you is the vast majority of RSE workers do an exceptionally good job of looking after their workers. It's in their interest to do so. And frankly, if they exploit them, they don't deserve to have access to the program. But what I would say to you is I've been out and met with Hortus New Zealand, for example, in Blenheim last week. There is some absolutely fabulous care happening with those RSE workers, and I'm really, really proud of the way they do care about them very deeply.
And have you received your voting papers yet?
Sorry?
Have you received your voting papers yet?
For the Auckland Council? Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Have you voted?
I haven't been home to have a chance yet.
When will you be voting?
I'll look to do that over the weekend.
You mentioned you're heading out to the base to security. Just on those ram raids, do you feel the government needs to take responsibility for the spike and the ongoing spike in ram raids?
Look, we've been talking about this, Mark Mitchell and myself, since I think back in March. We proposed a very comprehensive gang plan. We know there's massive gang activity here in the Waikato specifically, but what we're saying very clearly is this is a government that's got the balance wrong. It's a government that's soft on crime. It's not doing enough to protect the victims, and it's not doing enough to actually clamp down on serious offenders. When you think about the victims, the government under pressure announced a business plan where they would actually help support businesses harden up their security. Only 5 businesses in 4 months have actually received that funding, despite the promise to be able to get it to many, many businesses. On the other hand, you've got serious repeat offenders, and we're not giving them the right consequences at the moment.
What would National do if they were in government?
Yeah, well, the thing is that
specifically for these really young offenders.
Yeah, so there is actually remedies available already that are just not being used by the government. You start with family group conferences. We've frankly got way too many of them. Then you go to community service, then you go to home detention, and then you go to residential youth facilities. And for serious repeat offenders who are actually causing a quarter of all the ram raid activity that we're seeing in this country at the moment, they need much more serious consequences, and that's just not happening.
What did you think about what you saw
says harsher
at the base?
punishments aren't the solution because the kids are wearing them as a badge of honour.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Sorry, OT says harsher punishments aren't the solution because the kids are wearing them as a badge of honour. What do you say to that, and what would you do?
Well, look, I think the reality again is you've got mechanisms and consequences that the government is just not using with those most serious repeat offenders. The other piece that I would put to you very strongly is that a big driver of this is also absence from school. We are living in a developed country at the moment that has only 46% of its kids going to school regularly. We have 100,000 kids chronically absent from school in New Zealand in 2022. And what I'd say to you is other countries, and people say, oh, it's about COVID and it's about illness. Well, actually, less than half of it can be explained by that. And other countries, other developed countries, have 85% of their kids going to school regularly. And that's where we need to get to. And a big part of that is if you're a parent and you don't know where your 11-year-old is between 12 and 5, and if you don't know, actually, you're not getting them to school, and we've got lots of good incentives to get kids to school, we need to focus on that. We need to get kids back to school, because I think it's very strongly linked to this stuff.
It is also still law for kids to go to school.
Sorry?
Is it still law for kids to go to school?
Yep, it is. I mean, we want kids in school, and we want parents to get their kids to school.
What was your reaction to what happened at the base over the weekend?
It was a different level again, wasn't it? Because what we actually, there's a saying, it's daylight robbery, and the reality is, what we saw over the weekend was 2 instances of daylight robbery, and that's why I'm looking forward to getting out there today and actually talking to the security staff and talking to the retail workers. And what I can tell you already from some conversations I've had with those organisations is that, their partners are not wanting them to work in retail anymore in a shopping mall, because they don't feel they're safe. Just put yourself in their shoes. They're doing everything right. They're going to work, they've woken up, they're working hard, they're in that mall, feeling they'll be safe, and then that happens to them. And so, that's what I'm talking about. We're not victim focused at the moment. The government is just sending the wrong messages. It's soft on crime, and it's got the balance all wrong, frankly.
What are you going to say to those security workers and staff?
I just want to hear their story, and I want to understand how they feel. Is really my focus.
You said only 5 businesses have received that funding. Where do you think the money should be going?
Well, the point is the government, under pressure from the opposition and from the public, rushed to put together a fund to say that they're going to help, businesses being ram raided. And the reality is 4 months down the road, only 5 businesses have received funding. So again, it's a government that likes to make statements and it likes to make announcements and put spending announcements together, but it doesn't deliver outcomes. And in the middle is something called delivery and execution and getting things done. And the outcomes really matter, because that's how New Zealand goes forward. And you look at crime. We've got less prisoners in jail, and that was great if we had less crime. But violent crime's up over 20%, retail crime's up over 30%, ram raids are up over 500%, gang memberships up over 40%. And so, there's no measure of success or outcome in the crime space. And that's why New Zealanders are owed a basic right to feel safe in their own home, in their own community, and in their own workplace. And that's just not happening because we've got a government soft on crime with the balance all wrong.
Mayor Paula Southgate asked for specific Hamilton Waikato-based funding. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I mean, we're up for anything and everything. It's not a funding issue, it's a messaging issue that the government's not doing enough to put themselves in the shoes of victims and how they're feeling. But more importantly, it's not delivering the consequences for serious repeat offenders. And we need to start to understand in this country we have rights and responsibilities to each other. That's how our society and how our citizenship works. And that's the deal. We can't just take the rights and not have the responsibility.
Does the solution lie in the justice system?
Well, the solution lies in the government and the justice system applying and using all the consequences that it has available to it. And what we're saying is, yes, for first-time offenders, there might be a different course of action. But when you've got serious repeat offenders undertaking violent crime like we saw here in Hamilton, you have to have tougher consequences. Okay, team, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out here today. See ya.
Thank you.